Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome everyone. Thanks very much for coming, everyone. Welcome to UQ. It's great that you've all managed to find the building. It is a bit of a rabbit warren, but thanks very much for coming. Thanks to so many people coming from interstate. It's wonderful to see so many non-Brisbane people here taking the time out of what for most of us is our off week before SWAT-vac and semester starts again. And we've got people joining us online from as far away as Europe, New Zealand and all across Australia as well. So it's wonderful to see everyone on our 10th anniversary, and Deb will talk a little bit more about that very shortly. And it's NAIDOC week this week, of course. And so there's lots of activities going on campus here this week and around Australia. And I'd just like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands here in Brisbane and UQ, the Yagara and the Turrbal people. And also acknowledge and pay our respects to all the traditional people from all the places where people are joining us from today. That's one of our beautiful Aboriginal designs here at the university. To start today, I'd like to welcome Professor Joe Grotowski, Head of the School of Maths and Physics. Has been a long time supporter of first year in maths, allowing UQ staff to attend the various workshops and forum for around Australia, and has kindly sponsored the morning tea, lunch and afternoon tea today and tomorrow. Joe did teach first year. He taught our first year course, Calculus and Linear Algebra 1, that Poe and I now teach. And so he's set a very high bar for the teaching of first year maths here at UQ. Joe actually started the same year here at UQ as I did. Joe's now a professor and I'm not, so... But he deserves his professorship and I don't, so there you go. Joe's had an interesting life. I just dug his bio off the UQ website and did his PhD in New York, fluent in German. His Japanese is pretty good as well, and has taught a lot of places around the world, including in Chile, Canberra at the Science Centre. Yep. So I'll just call Joe up to say a few words. Thanks, Joe.
Great, thank you very much for that, Michael. How's the picture out in Zoom? Can people see us or are they just seeing the screen? Okay, good. Hi, everybody in Zoom. Just begin by adding my acknowledgements to Michael's, acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which we're meeting and gathering today, and pay respects to elders past and present. Just fix that. It's a bit more familiar. Okay. Yeah, so thanks for that introduction, Michael. Has been a little while since I taught first year. Somebody's turned on. Yes, that's wonderful. Can you blur the video a bit too, please? So I think that I got to teach the second semester of the Calculus 1, which was sort of the kind of a hardcore, because it was the engineers who'd failed in first semester who were coming back. And it was also the engineers who didn't have specialist maths, but thought they would catch up to their mates by doing Calc 1 and Calc 2 in second semester. And that was actually the precursor to Poe's support learning tutorial, because we sort of noticed that the people who didn't do that well in maths and then tried to do that combination didn't do that well. But anyhow, as Michael said, I've moved on from first year, and now I get to teach boutique third year classes, which are down not even up to 200, not quite, like 190 last semester. 200 would have been nicer. Anyhow, but it's incredibly important what we do in our first year classes, and it's incredibly important that we have the first year in Maths Network. And I think it is, as everybody knows, the 10th year since Deb set this up. And people from UQ are proud to have been involved right from the very start. It's got a wonderful legacy, as we are aware. There's been the odd prize and the odd citation through the last 10 years that have had quite direct connections to the network. And last year we had Poe's Prize. As you're aware, we also had 2 citations. Right, so it was Leanne and Tom from Western Sydney. And we also had from Deakin, it was Kerry and Simon and the team. We've got those people up here as well. And I think you're all going to be presenting, aren't you? If you're not, I just dobbed you in to present, but I gather that you are. All right. And we're also fortunate here to have a couple of our students who are tutors, and they're also going to be presenting to us. So the situation at the moment with tutors, with the profile that casual employment has around the country is super important. But what's also important for us while these conversations are going on about what tutors do is to make sure that we get a voice for what maths tutors do. Because the people who get involved in the conversations and who are setting up the enterprise bargaining agreement and who are setting up the rules for tutors often come from different parts of the campus, and they have a different model of tutoring. And then they think, well, if we've got these 4 options, then, you know, everybody's going to fit into one of those boxes. There's nobody from maths or even from science or even from engineering at those meetings often. And then you get a box that just doesn't fit. Right. So the work that our tutors do is incredibly important, but we've got to find a way to get it recognised and built in a way that they can do what they have to do, both in their contact time and in their other marking time, and fit it into the EB. So it's great to have a network like this where we can compare best practice. The other thing that's super important for us at the moment is, and I see that there's a session here on good old ChatGPT and generative AI and all those words that people throw around. And if you ask people from different parts of the campus what it means, then they have very different visions of what it actually means. We've seen documentation here where people are talking about collaborating with AI as if AI is sort of like already at the stage where it's data from Star Trek, right? So yeah, let's collaborate with them, right? As opposed to this is a tool, what do we do with it? How do we make sure people use it responsibly? We've also got people who think ChatGPT is basically solved because Turnitin, which of course everyone uses for everything, has an add-on module now, which can detect when you use it. So solved, right? So that's great that we're talking about here because again, in some sense, we've had something like this for years. It's just that the students haven't used it, right? You've got Wolfram Alpha, right? And if you pay for Pro, it'll write out a solution for you, which would get you full marks in a lot of routine first year assignments, right? And luckily, our students don't read their broadcast emails, or they would know that they only have to tick about 3 radio buttons and they have a subscription to Wolfram Pro. All right, I'm being a little bit glib there, but the point is that we've had stuff like this in the background. It's come to the forefront and it's in different areas now, but again, it's super important to get the math perspective on this stuff. All right, so I probably said enough now, but congratulations on the 10th anniversary. And thanks very much for everybody for giving up the time. As Michael said, it's a sort of a recharge, couple of weeks for people before the semester kicks off, and it's also school holidays. So I'm actually going to be nicking off soon and doing the last couple of days of school holidays. All right, but thanks very much and hope you have a great workshop. Oh yeah.
I didn't mean that the way it sounded, obviously. Thanks, Joe, for those really great words. And I'd also like to say thank you to Joe and the University of Queensland, who have been really great supporters of the First Year in Maths Network over a long period of time. And we'll talk about that in a minute. I haven't really got anything prepared, so I'm just going to ramble on for a couple of minutes. So the First Year in Maths Network really started 10 years ago, maybe 11 years ago. The project that supported First Year in Maths was an OLT project. Remember that OLT, when we had a government that supported education and they gave us grants to run projects across universities in Australia. So we had one, and it was the idea really for the First Year in Maths Network was twofold. But one was to build a network of people that could come and talk and share their ideas. And I think what's been great about that project is that it did start that network, and I didn't think in those days that we'd still be here 10 years later, but we are, so we can talk a bit about that. But the other part of that project was sort of touched a little bit on what Joe talked about in terms of tutors and fitting into boxes. And the idea was really thinking about who was doing the maths teaching, what sort of roles did they have in the university, how were those roles rewarded, recognised through promotion and other ways. And so we went around the country and we wrote a paper about that, and all that stuff's online on the website if you want to hook in and read some of that work. I don't think it's changed that much in terms of the problems that we have and are still talking about today. So we're still talking about work, we're still talking about assessment, we're still talking about teaching maths at first year. The problems are still there, but I think part of the reason that we're still talking about them is that they change. So it's a bit like having children. Just when you figured out how to deal with a 2-year-old, all of a sudden they're 4 years old and they've got different problems. And I think that's what's happening in our space. So we've just sorted out what to do in COVID times, and then we think we've got the idea about online exams, and then ChatGPT comes along. And so I don't think we're ever going to stop talking about these issues, which is great that we've got a network like this that keeps going, because this is a great place to talk about it. And already when people walk in the room, they've already got great conversations going on. They might not know the people, but they've all got the same issues that they can talk about. So it gives them an immediate connection to talk to people who are thinking about these things really deeply, where people in maths schools, other people in maths schools, might not be thinking about them as deeply as we are. That's not a criticism of those people, but we have people like Joe who go on to be professors of pure mathematics, and people like Michael who aren't professors of pure mathematics, but are thinking really deeply about the nuts and bolts teaching that we do on a daily basis. So their focus is a bit different on the way they do their work. Not saying that Joe's not thinking about them too. Sorry, Joe, because I know you are. I didn't mean it that way. But the work that we're doing is different. So what we can do is enable and do a lot of that thinking to support other people in maths schools. I think that's probably a reasonable thing to say. Hi, people online, by the way. I didn't say hello. I don't want to talk too much more about first year maths. We'll talk a little bit more about this as we go through. I would like to say I think the quality of the talks that we have here has improved over the 10 years, and the things that we're doing now in Australia and talking about are world class. So I've been to quite a few conferences around the world, just been to one, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. The talks that happen in this group are as good or better than any talks that I've seen, and the sorts of things that we're talking about and thinking about and the ways we're thinking about them are actually already more advanced than what's going on in Europe. So I'm going to encourage you in the workshop that we run tomorrow to be thinking about where else you're talking. We need to be on the world stage a bit more. And we've got someone here who is on the world stage a bit more. Maybe she didn't intend to be, but the consequence of getting a National University Australia's Teaching Award to be the teaching recipient in the country for 2022 is a very big achievement, and I could not be more thrilled that that achievement has been gained by Poe Hillock, who's been one of our first members of the First Year in Maths group. She was here right from the very beginning. I'm not going to claim any credit to what First Year in Maths has done for her, because I think being the sort of teacher that Poe is, she's engaged, she's learning, she's listening, she's talking, she's using information that she sees in her teaching to make it better all the time. She's a very humble person.